Unveiled. 5 sinister and spine-chilling true stories revealed this summer that will haunt you. The air was thick and stifling that muggy summer evening in Oakwood Pines, where until recently, children rode their bikes carefree and laughter hung in the air. But whispers of dread lingered beneath the glossy surface of the suburb, shadowing every corner. Sarah Thompson, a weary single mother of 2, found herself ensnared in a nightmare lurking just beneath the perfect facade of her neighborhood. She'd just settled into her couch after another grueling night shift at the hospital when her scrolling thumb froze. "Have you heard about the Holloways?" The words pulsed like a siren in her mind, instantly igniting fears she never wanted to acknowledge. The news was all too familiar. Families from nearby neighborhoods had vanished into thin air. Once, the local park overflowed with children's laughter. Now tales of disembodied spirits filled the night, suffocating the air like a heavy fog. As days rolled by, an ominous presence clung tightly to Sarah. Those perfect neighbors, the Holloways, had once been a whimsical part of her life. Their cheery grins and perfect potlucks were woven into the small-town fabric. But now, with every sighting, their smiles felt unnatural, as if crafted from porcelain. It was the way they laughed, a little too metallic, a little too loud. Sarah began to see the Holloways through a lens of unease. Overheard murmurs and exchanged glances hinted at something darker lurking beneath those glossy exterior. The murmurs of the townspeople, her very own friends, fell deaf on her ears like distant thunder. Her instincts screamed louder. When local authorities dismissed her fears as paranoia, her heart dropped. Panic gnawed at her until it became unbearable. Each return home from her shift felt like stepping defiantly into a trap. A barbecue was coming up, a gathering of neighbors, and she debated taking her children. The thought of letting them mingle with the Holloways clawed at her. But the allure of normalcy was powerful. How could she deny her children that joy? And then, the storm hit. After the Holloways had played the perfect hosts that Saturday, the sun dipped below the horizon, taking its warmth with it. Sarah's heart dropped like a stone when she realized Ethan was missing. A cold sweat broke out over her body as she bolted from her home, desperation clawing at her throat. Panic enveloped her like a suffocating shroud. "Ethan!" she screamed, her voice cracking as she flew across the manicured lawns, echoing into a silence that felt more sinister with every cry. As the shadows lengthened and night edged in, she felt the pulse of fear thrumming in her ears. The neighbors, once warm faces, now felt like vultures circling a corpse. A familiar chill snapped her focus back to the park, the heart of the chaos. It wasn't the place of laughter anymore, but the epicenter of ghosts and folklore. With each step toward its fringes, the grip of dread tightened around her heart. Was it too late? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As darkness enveloped her, a figure emerged from the shadows, swathed in the legends that had ensnared her community. A scream of horror built in her chest as she frantically clutched her phone, her heart racing when a notification flared to life. Missing, Ethan Thompson. It was a grim omen. The realization ignited her terror. Was the man before her the key to the Holloways' secret, or merely another part of their chilling game? Sarah's breath quickened, the stakes now unbearably high. She had to confront the Holloways. Could she unravel the horror before she, too, fell into the net of the nightmare? The man stood there, his features obscured by the darkness, yet Sarah could sense a knowing smirk lurking beneath his shadowy facade. "You're looking for your son," he said, his voice low and sinister, wrapping around her like a cold snake. He stepped closer, and Sarah could see the glint of his eyes, reflecting the waning moonlight. "Where is he?" The words clawed at her throat. Panic set in deeper, cold fingers gripping her spine. "Don't be hasty. The Holloways have a way of keeping things in the family," he drawled, an unsettling satisfaction creeping into his voice. As he spoke, the wind shifted, carrying with it a rustling sound from the park's treeline. It felt alive, whispering secrets, exchanging glances that dug into her very soul. When she stepped toward him, a heavy fog rolled in, obscuring her vision, thick as the fear packing itself in her chest. Was it the fog, or the sheer terror twisting inside her gut that clouded her mind? The memories of families vanishing flashed in her mind like a reel, each image splattered with blood-soaked shadows. "Why don't you come find out?" he teased, his lips splitting into a smile that made her skin crawl. Sarah's senses screamed, urging her to run, but the thought of Ethan paralyzed her. The man turned, beckoning her to follow as he melted into the shadows, deeper into the park where the trees converged like specters from a nightmare. With a shaky breath, she followed, every footfall drowning under the weight of her rapid heartbeat. She knew she should turn back, call for help, but the desperate need to find her son urged her onward. The path twisted ahead, lined with creeping ivy that seemed to reach for her, even claw at her ankles. "Ethan," she called again, her voice cracking on the edge of despair. Answering silence throbbed in her ears, a silence too thick, too deliberate. And then, faintly, a cry. Was it her imagination, or was her son really out there? Her heart raced, propelling her forward despite the dread settling like stone in her stomach. The glow of the park lights flickered, bathing everything in a sickly yellow hue that painted the scene with malicious intent. The foliage whispered, curling around her, disorienting her further. The man reappeared, a mere shadow among the shadows, unperturbed by her frantic state. "You see, Sarah, the Holloways are not what they seem. They celebrate every new addition to their family. And Ethan," he paused, letting the air grow thick with impending dread, "he's a perfect candidate. A perfect little boy." Sick horror twisted in her chest. "What do you mean?" The disbelief tasted bitter, scratching at her throat. Before he could answer, a rustling crescendo erupted from the trees. Sarah's breath hitched. Was it the Holloways? Were they coming for her? Panic ignited furious adrenaline as her eyes darted around, assessing her narrow escape options. "Run while you can," the man hissed, fading away once more, swallowed by the blackness that engulfed the park. Her instincts kicked in, dread now a searing blaze in her veins. "Ethan, I'm coming," she screamed as she bolted deeper into the park, leaping over roots that seemed alive, winding through the trees like serpents. Each step pulled her closer to the heart of the horror. And just as the trees parted, revealing a clearing, a surreal scene froze her in place. There, amidst the twisted roots and dead grass, stood the Holloways. Their unnaturally bright smiles pierced through the darkness, their eyes gleaming like ravenous beasts. "Welcome to the family, Sarah," they crooned in unison. "Join us." Fear seized her body, a vice tightening around her chest. She could feel the end was near, yet the terrible choices loomed like shadows between what remained of her reality and the horror ahead. But before she could make a move, a sound broke through the surreal gathering, a child's laughter echoing through the clearing. It was Ethan. "Ethan!" She screamed again, the name a desperate prayer. In that instant, she stood at a crossroads of dread, thrusting herself toward either salvation or a more terrible fate. In the distance, she saw a figure watching her. The man from before, now just a watcher in the night. But what was he waiting for? With every instinct screaming for her to go, she stood still, heart pounding, as the Holloways closed in. What had she stepped into, and could she escape this nightmare undetected? The terrible answer lurked just ahead. The laughter echoed again, high-pitched and carefree, slicing through the thick tension like a knife. Sarah's heart raced, a frantic drumbeat in her ears, drowning out the whispers of the Holloways who surrounded her. Their smiles broadened, eyes glinting with something unholy, an invitation to something dark. "Ethan!" she shouted, her voice trembling as she fought against the urge to run. The boyish laughter seemed to rise and fall like waves, crashing against her fear. "Come to us, dear boy," they sang, that unison voice harmonious yet chilling. Each word dripped with the promise of something sinister, dances of elegance wrapped in malice. What did they want with Ethan? She couldn't bear the thought of losing him, the exact fate that squirmed in her mind while the man had taunted her about family. With every heartbeat, the clearing constricted. It felt like the earth itself conspired to keep her trapped. She spotted a sliver of movement among the trees, a flicker of light, as if a doorway opened in the shadows behind the gathering. Ethan, she cried, stepping forward, desperate to reach him. The Holloways danced closer, their eerie choreography swaying, and in that moment, their joy was palpable, electric. Suddenly, the boyish laughter transformed into a shriek, piercing like ice through the air. "Help! Mom!" The terrified cry struck a nerve deep within Sarah, igniting flames of protection in her chest. With a push from deep within, she hurled herself toward the direction of the sound. But the Holloways wouldn't let her go. They surged toward her, a wave of bright faces and clinging hands, clawing at her, reaching out as though she were the prize. "Join us, Sarah," they chanted, their voices a cacophony of sweetness and venom. "Your son belongs to us." Every instinct screamed that she had to get to him. She dodged, pushed past their grasping fingers, her heart a violent rhythm pounding against her ribs. She was in a tunnel of shadows, spiraling deeper into their trap. As she stumbled into the thickest part of the trees, the laughter dimmed, replaced by a low, sinister hum that buzzed in her ears. The ground beneath her was slick and squishy, like walking on a living thing, sending shocks of revulsion up through her legs. "Ethan, where are you?" she called out, breathless, her voice caught in a confusing mix of hope and despair. Then she saw him, a small figure amidst the ancient roots, sitting on the ground, staring at her, eyes wide as saucers. "Mom," he squeaked, a sense of relief washing over her. But as she reached for him, the ground trembled. The Holloway's laughter rose again, swirling around her, building a discordant melody that infiltrated her mind. With each step she took toward Ethan, the shadows morphed, the light from the park flickering, consumed by the gathering darkness. "Don't!" Ethan screamed, his small fingers stretching out as if he sensed the danger before her. "They'll take you too." Panic gripped her, ripping her heart from her chest. She fought against her own terror, running toward him, pulling him into her arms. But before she could take flight, the ground beneath them pulsed like a heartbeat. "Leave her, Ethan," one of the Holloways said, this time lower, colder. "Join us, as your mother never will." The shadows coiled tighter, and Sarah felt the tendrils wrapping around her legs, pulling her down. She could feel the dread curling around her like a vice, stealing the air from her lungs. "No," she screamed, her voice raw. "We want to be part of your twisted family." Before Ethan could respond, the ground erupted, light bursting like a thunderclap in the oppressive gloom. The figure of the man reappeared, again watching, expressionless as if he were the conductor of this macabre symphony. "Mom!" Ethan cried, fear spilling from his eyes. In that instant, reality splintered around her, each fractured piece begging her to make a choice to succumb to the darkness or fight her way back into the light. As the shadows closed in, she would not let the nightmare claim her. The terrible answer, lurking, loomed larger. What if the man had come to help? Or had he waited to watch them vanish? Time was slipping away. The darkness swallowed them whole. Sarah tugged on Ethan, desperate to shield him from the grasping shadows, but they tightened like a boa, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Cold sweat dripped down her back, and her mind raced, thrumming with fear. "No!" she screamed again, but the word was swallowed by the echo of laughter. The Holloways swirled around them, their faces shifting, stretching into grotesque caricatures. "Your spirit will be free, Sarah. Lay with us, forever." Ethan trembled in her arms, quivering against her like a small bird caught in a storm. "Mom, don't let them take you. I can't lose you." As if to mock her resolve, the earth quaked beneath them, sending jagged cracks spider-webbing through the ground. Somewhere deep within those fissures, a whispered promise floated up, a promise of endless despair that snagged on her heart, a promise she could not ignore. The man-south figure loomed close now, an indifferent sentinel in this hellish ballet. He watched with calm, his face unreadable, as though every agonized scream thrilled him. Each shudder of the ground seemed to resonate with his silent amusement. "No." Sarah's fists clenched around Ethan, using her body as a shield. "We want to give in." With every ounce of will, she summoned her strength, pulling Ethan close. "We have to fight. Remember the woods? Think of the light, Ethan. We need to reach the light." In the chaos, the hollow laughter faltered, replaced by a low growl from the shadows. "Your will is futile, Sarah. The dust of your desperation cannot change what is meant to be." The trees around them twisted, limbs like grasping fingers clawing at the air. For a moment, the grotesque beauty fascinated her, but horror quickly eclipsed it. The ground pulsing underfoot, the sickly sweet aroma of decay, it was all a trap, a cruel facade. "I want to let them take you," she whispered fiercely to Ethan, her eyes burning with determination. He steadied himself against her, his small body vibrating with fear, but the courage shone in his gaze. "On three," she said, her heart thundering. 1, 2, 3. With a fierce yell, Sarah tore herself away from the shadows, yanking Ethan along. They sprinted deeper into the dark embrace of the trees, the laughter fading, shifting behind them. For every step they took, it felt as though the darkness was clawing back, hungry for their retreat. The man's voice reverberated, chilling yet tantalizing. "You cannot escape what is woven into your destiny. You are already ours." Every word was like a blade, slicing through the hope that emerged like fragile tendrils in a storm. Shadows chased them, tendrils twisting around her ankles, tugging her back, hoping to reclaim what had slipped through their fingers. "Mom, I'm scared," Ethan cried, his little voice breaking. They stumbled against the roots, the mist swirling thicker, but Sarah's resolve steeled her. "Trust me, Ethan. Hold on." With every ounce of strength, she reached for the flickering light beyond the trees, dim but persistent. As they barreled forward, the shadows began to morph, spiraling into chaotic figures, wailing and thrashing as if to contest their escape. Suddenly, a massive shadow lunged from the canopy, blocking their path. It loomed like a monstrous specter, disturbing the very air around them. Join us, it howled, voices merging into a cacophony, mocking and pleading simultaneously. Sarah recoiled for just a second, which felt like an eternity. Then, she rearranged her grip on Ethan, urging him forward. "We can't stop, Ethan. Just keep running." But the creature only grew larger, its ghastly face dimly illuminated in the suffocating gloom, and with it, all the sorrow of unfulfilled dreams and lost souls resonated. It reached for them, encroaching, hungry. "Where will you go?" it rasped, the voices echoing with haunting intensity. "This world or the next, you will never escape." They dashed toward the flickering light, every ounce of their being melded into motion, heart and soul pushing through the thickening dark. Then, just as they thought a path opened, a jagged wall of shadows surged forth. Would they break through? Or would they fall forever into the darkness? The light quivered just out of reach, but determination flared within her. They were close to lose hope. In that moment, something shifted, an unsettling quiet falling over the woods. Was it anticipation or an omen of doom? She tightened her grip around Ethan. Whatever awaited them in the light, one thing remained clear. The Holloways would not let go easily. What awaited them on the other side? The shadows surged again, clawing at Sarah's ankles, pulling her down into the suffocating darkness. "Ethan, run!" she screamed, her voice cracking under the weight of terror. They stumbled forward as the earth quaked beneath them, each step a fight against the very ground that threatened to hold them captive. The flickering light ahead beckoned like a siren, but the air was thick with malevolence. A growl echoed amongst the trees, low and visceral, sending ripples of dread through her. The malevolent figures twisted and writhed, their hollow laughter melding into a symphony of despair. "You cannot escape. You belong to us." Every word rippled through her like a current of ice, numbing her resolve. Ethan's grip on her hand tightened, a small beacon of warmth in the raging storm around them. Sarah refused to yield to the fear coursing through her veins. She pushed forward, her heart hammering against her chest like a drum, an anthem of survival. "Just a little more," she urged, her breath ragged. The warmth of the flickering light drew closer. It promised safety, but the shadows took on a different hue, swirling violently with a desperate hunger. Frantic whispers slithered through the air, words indistinguishable yet heavy with foreboding. "You will join us," they barreled toward the light, teeth gritted against the cold that clawed at their backs, but the thrum of impending danger begged to silence them. A blinding flash startled her, illuminating the world just enough for her to see faces twisted in anguish, hands grasping, begging for what they had lost. The visage of despair was overwhelming, each familiar face wrapping itself around Sarah's heart like a vice. "Mom." Ethan gasped, his voice raw and strained. She cast a quick glance over her shoulder just as a shadow darted, reaching toward them with hunger etched into its features. It was nothing more than the shape of disgruntled memories, but its presence loomed like a dark storm cloud. She had seen that face before once in a photograph, frozen in time, now a part of the Holloway's collective agony. Bursting free from her moment of bewilderment, Sarah pulled Ethan tighter. "We have to keep going. Don't look back." They surged ahead, the sensation of the light growing increasingly intense, twisting her heart with anticipation and fear. She could hear the tortured whispers behind them, feel their breath on the nape of her neck, oozing sorrow, unfurling despair like ragged banners of anguish. Just as the wall of darkness seemed insurmountable, they broke through. A shimmer enveloped them. Air, fresh and sweet, crashing over her skin like an awakening. Sarah squinted against the brightness, but the illusion of safety faltered as they found themselves encircled by trees. Yet this time the foliage looked alive, pulsating like a heart just waiting to consume them. "Ethan," she whispered, stepping back instinctively, dread engulfing her once again. The way out was blocked, and somewhere, hidden within the heavy leaves and boughs, unseen eyes watched, waiting. Suddenly, the laughter rose, shrill and piercing. "You're not safe yet. This is just the beginning." A harsh cackle erupted, and the roots of the trees twisted tighter, like fingers closing in. Each pulse of the branches mirrored the frantic drumbeat of her heart. "We have to find a way out," Sarah yelled, her voice trembling with desperation. Ethan's small hand trembled in hers, a fragile lifeline. They turned, seeking a path through the pulsating darkness, but the whispers intensified, emanating from every corner. "Join us, it's inevitable." It was a promise, tainted and tantalizing, and Sarah couldn't shake the growing doubt that bubbled in her chest, a fear that she was already lost. Just as she braced herself for another run, an ominous figure separated from the shadows. The man, his face devoid of emotion, an arbiter of despair, stepped into the flickering light, an embodiment of ancient evil. "Welcome to our domain," he intoned, his voice smooth like silk yet sharp as glass, cutting her resolve in two. "It is time to see what lies ahead. What could possibly await them in this new nightmare?" The uncertainty buzzed like a swarm of flies around her, promising a terror beyond comprehension. The shadows shifted, restlessly hungry, as if the very air thickened with memories longing to ensnare them once again. Would she and Ethan find their way back to safety? Or would they succumb to the sinister pull of the Holloways, destined to wander the void forever? A chill gnawed at Sarah's core, a relentless whisper of dread that twisted her stomach into knots. The man before them loomed larger than life, his gaze penetrating through to her very soul. It felt as if the shadows had coalesced into him, carving out a living nightmare right under her skin. "Speak, little girl. What do you wish to know?" His lips cracked into a smile that could charm the unsuspecting, yet Sarah felt only the clench of fear around her throat. Her heart raced. How do we get out of here?" The words tumbled out, barely above a whisper. But she knew that the answer was likely to be as twisted as the shadows themselves. He chuckled softly, the sound echoing eerily like a distant chime carried by a mournful wind. "Escape is but an illusion, my dear. You've crossed the threshold into our domain. Your fate has been woven into the fabric of this darkness." Ethan clung to Sarah, his small frame trembling against her side. "We just want to go home," he cried, his voice barely audible above the symphony of anguish surrounding them. "Home." The man's laughter pealed through the air, jagged and sharp. "Home is a sweet memory, but how sweet it is when it lies just beyond reach." He stepped closer, cloaked in the very darkness they sought to flee. "Here, you may find that home has become something else entirely." Suddenly, the trees surrounding them shifted, their branches coiling like serpents. The stench of decay filled the air, mingling with the remnants of lost souls screaming for release. Shadows flickered and danced, warping into grotesque shapes, mimicking the forms of those they had once been. "Mom," Ethan whimpered, confusion clouding his innocent eyes. Sarah bit her lip, fighting back tears as she fought the memory of losing everything, plunging deeper into this nightmare conjured by her own guilt. A figure emerged, A woman, a specter that seemed to float closer, her face twisted in an agonizing mask of despair. "Ethan," she croaked, her voice like gravel scraping against bone. "Help me, you have to help us now." Sarah gasped, yanking Ethan back as if to shield him from the grasping hands of the darkness. "Stay away," the strange man roared with delight. "You see? Even here, hope is a cruel joke. One moment of weakness, and the damned will take what they desire." He turned, gesturing toward the grotesque tableau that surrounded them. "Look at them, lost souls, blissfully unaware, forever seeking reunions that will never be met." He advanced with slow, deliberate steps. "The real question is, how much are you willing to sacrifice? Love? Hope? Perhaps even your own senses?" Sarah's heart thundered with panic. "Shut up. Leave us alone," she shouted, her voice trembling, but fierce like a wildfire blazing through the obscurity. At that moment, the roots beneath her feet began to stir, wrapping tighter around her ankles as if sensing her vulnerability, pressing against her skin like a cold, clammy hand. "Every choice has its price." He leaned closer, his eyes glinting, reflecting a faint light from deep within. "There is no escape without payment, but what is it you are willing to lose to save one another?" Ethan slid his hand from hers, eyes wide with terror. Panic coursed through Sarah as she realized the root's grip was shifting toward him. "Ethan, no!" The shadows howled in delight, a chorus of despair that echoed through the branches. She stepped in front of her brother, fear pushing her forward as she bellowed back at the man. "You'll get nothing from us." The man's face darkened. "Such spirit." But remember, darkness feasts on defiance. Just then, an unearthly howl erupted nearby, and the shadows quivered as a new figure stepped forward, larger, darker, and wreathed in an aura of pure malevolence. The forest trembled violently, and Sarah knew their fate was sealed in the moment. What price would they pay to survive? As the darkness clawed closer, time twisted, rushing toward a countdown they couldn't comprehend. The air thickened with dread as shadows twined around them, tightening their hold. Would they succumb to the depths, or was there a way to seize control of their terrible fate? The howl faded, leaving behind an oppressive silence that wrapped around Sarah like a suffocating blanket. She could hear her breath, ragged and panicked, thrumming in her ears as if the very fabric of the forest listened keenly. Ethan's fingers curled around her arm, his grip painfully tight, grounding her in an abyss of terror. "Sarah, what are we going to do?" he whispered, his voice trembling. It was the innocence in his tone that ignited a fierce flame of determination within her. She couldn't let him slip away. They would get out of this darkness together. The dark figure loomed closer, its features obscured but pulsing with a raw, primal power. It emanated menace, far greater than anything Sarah had ever encountered, as if it was a hunter stalking its prey. The man with the sharp smile merged into this new entity, shadows flickering and distorting his form until they melded into an unspeakable terror. "You will find that it is futile to resist," it growled, the sound shaking the ground beneath them. "Join the symphony of lost souls. Embrace your despair, or suffer." The roots tightened painfully, whispering secrets of past sacrifices, their grip unyielding. Panic surged through Sarah as she glanced at Ethan, who stared wide-eyed at the specter, frozen in terror. She took a deep breath, steeling herself, desperation clawing at her insides like a wild thing seeking escape. "No," she exclaimed, voice firm. "We won't let you take us." With a sudden determination, she yanked at the roots clinging to her ankles, feeling their cold, clammy touch burn against her skin. The shadows shifted, swirling around her like a storm, retaliating with howls that echoed her insistence. They lashed against her resolve, each cry a reminder of the darkness that was hungry, desperate to consume. But she wouldn't give in. "Ethan, we need to find light. Follow me." She started to run, pulling her brother along, threading through the gnarled trees that seemed to twist and clamor, trying to grasp them. The world crumbled behind them, the symphony of anguish crescendoing, feeding on their fear. The figure lunged forward, phasing through the trees with inhuman speed, closing the distance in a heartbeat. "You cannot escape your fate," it howled, its voice a haunting echo that reverberated against the branches, twisting reality into a tangled web. Sarah's heart raced as she pushed through fear, trying to stay ahead of the shadow's grasp. Suddenly, The ground beneath her faltered. She stumbled, feeling the earth give way to a dark chasm. She caught Ethan just in time, pulling him back from the abyss, threatening to swallow them whole. "Look," he cried, pointing trembling fingers ahead. A speck of faint light flickered in the distance, pulsating like a heartbeat. It was a dim glow, but to Sarah, it felt like hope, a tether back to who they were before this nightmare engulfed them. "Don't let go," Sarah shouted as they dashed toward the light, the roiling darkness at their backs clawing hungrily, rage echoing in the air. The unearthly figure writhed, its form distorting with fury, and then surged toward them, seeking to reclaim what had nearly been lost. They sprinted toward the light, breathless and desperate, as tendrils of shadow lashed out, just inches from their heels. "Faster," Sarah urged, heart pounding, pushing herself beyond the limits of fear and despair. The light grew brighter, illuminating the fear-laden path ahead, but the darkness clawed and writhed, desperate to reclaim its lost prey. Would they reach that beacon? Or was the light merely another illusion, just one more cruel joke played by the darkness? The light flickered, pulsating faster as if aware of their approach. Would it save them or condemn them further? The shadows shrieked behind them, and in that moment, Sarah felt the very air pulse with anticipation. Their choice loomed just ahead, as uncertainty hung in the balance. They surged forward, each step driven by a primal fight for survival. Sarah's lungs burned, gasping for air, each breath mingling with the overwhelming scent of damp earth and decay. The light pulsed ahead like a heart beating against the chest of the night, and she focused on it, determined to reach it no matter the cost. "Please, please." Ethan's voice trembled behind her, filled with a mix of fear and hope that nearly broke her resolve. She glanced back, unable to resist one last look at his frightened face, and felt fury ignite within her. They wouldn't be trapped. Not now. But then a scream, a high-pitched wail erupted from the shadows, cruelly echoing their panic. The ground shook as the figure lunged again, closer, looming larger with each heartbeat. Time distorted, stretching like a dark, gnarly finger reaching for their souls. "Not much farther," she yelled, fighting the despair creeping into her heart. But the shadows were relentless. They lashed out, striking at her calves, wrapping around her ankles like a serpent ready to tighten its grip, sparking cold dread that coursed through her. "No," she gasped, yanking her leg free. Ethan was close behind, but the darkness roared around them. She caught sight of a jagged root protruding from the earth, and with a violent yank, she pulled it free as if it might serve as a weapon. "We can fight it, Ethan," she cried, brandishing the root like a staff. He stared, disbelief washing over his features. "What if it's too late? What if just trust me?" she snapped, voice fierce as steel. With every ounce of desperation surging through her veins, she charged toward the glimmer, willing herself, willing them both, to reach it before the shadows consumed them. The light swelled, brightening as they approached, illuminating more of their surroundings. It was no mere flicker. It revealed an archway formed by branches that twisted like a grotesque crown, shimmering with what seemed like hope. An unearthly beauty surrounded it, but it was still the forest, twisted and twisted more. She dashed forward and felt a tether pull something unspoken. Whatever lay beyond was a sanctuary to those in fear. "Ethan, now!" Sarah screamed as she stumbled into the clearing, eyes wide, taking in the brilliance like a euphoric embrace. But the dark figure didn't stop. Its howl escalated to a primordially agonizing scream that pierced her soul, a desperate outpouring of rage and lust. A torrent of shadow surged over them, threatening to snuff out the light, clinging to their limbs like a parasite, trying to drag them back into its depths. "Don't look away. We can't stop," Sarah shouted, urging Ethan forward. But her heart sank when he faltered, blocking the entrance in hesitation, doubt creeping into his deep-set eyes. "We're safe here, right? It can't reach us if we just stay no," she yelled, sparing no breath to explain the dangers of complacency. In that moment, she knew. If they didn't leave the embrace of the light, they risked becoming yet another tale lost in the woods. Just as Ethan started to retreat, shadows twisted and morphed, swallowing the light in a visceral assault. The ground trembled, seething like a living creature. The wail of despair echoed through the trees, and the air felt electric, charged with an unspeakable menace. Then, the ground cracked like thunder, revealing a gaping maw of darkness. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The forest was alive, and it was hungry. "Ethan now?" she screeched, grabbing his arm. The shadows wrapped around them, furious and relentless. They sprinted together, hearts unified in terror, plunging toward the light. Would it hold? A sudden crack of bright energy scorched the shadows. And then everything went silent. "What?" Ethan whispered, voice trembling. They had crossed into the light, but was it safety or something worse? Sarah turned to him, heart racing, knowing she had become a part of something larger. The fabric of survival was unraveling before them, and behind them, something stirred. What if it follows us? As the tremors of the earth echoed ominously, they realized the answer might be the very key to their salvation or their doom. But beneath it all, a deeper question loomed. What if the darkness was smarter than they had imagined? The silence pressed down on them like a heavy fog. Sarah squinted into the brightness, trying to make sense of their new surroundings. They stood in a clearing, caught between worlds where light met shadow. The air was thick, electric, vibrating with an unseen force. The absence of sound sent her heart racing, every beat echoing in the vastness like a warning drum. "Is it gone?" Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper, trembling as it broke the eerie stillness. "I don't know," she breathed, gripping the jagged root tightly, its rough texture grounding her as the fears surged again. "We can't stay here." Panic churned inside her like a storm. She wanted to scan the perimeter, to seek signs of safety, but dread weighed her down. What if they had escaped only to find a worse fate waiting just outside the glow? The light pulsed gently, an inviting beacon, yet it felt tainted, like a trickster luring them deeper. "We need to figure out a way out of here," she urged, eyes darting. If that thing followed us, a dull thud reverberated through the ground beneath them, like a heartbeat thumping in a ghostly chest. The earth shifted, and a crack appeared, spiderwebbing outward, darkness bubbling just beneath the surface. "Sarah!" Ethan stumbled, nearly losing his balance as he stepped back, fear making his voice rise. "What is happening?" Before she could respond, the shadows flickered and undulated around the edges of the light, as if testing its strength. For a moment, she could have sworn she saw shapes within the darkness, faces contorted in anguish, eyes wide with terror, just beyond the edge of safety. "Stay close to the light," she shouted, adrenaline pushing her forward. Manifesting courage she barely felt, she stepped cautiously to the edge of the clearing, heart slamming against her ribcage. "We can't let it get us again." Ethan's breath came in ragged gasps. "What if it wants us to move?" He hesitated, glancing between the darkness and the inviting glow. "What if this is a trap?" The shadows intensified, a deep growl resonating from the dark. A warning? A promise? The sound vibrated through her bones, unleashing primal fear that coated her tongue in the taste of copper. "Whatever it is, it's bad," Sarah shot back, her resolve beginning to fracture. "We're not waiting to find out." At that moment, the disturbing howl from before erupted again, chilling her blood, pulling at her insides, a slithering echo of loathing thirst. It pierced the silence, resonating through the trees, reflecting the dread in their eyes. "Run!" she screamed, and with that, she dove back toward the heart of the light, Ethan beside her. They fled, hearts racing, fear propelling them like a current. But the edges of illumination pulsed and flickered as they moved, as if struggling against forces pulling at it from the outside. The ground shook with anger, every step they took threatening to unearth the hidden horrors waiting just beneath the surface. She could feel it, a dark presence that thrived on their despair, growing stronger with every heartbeat. Suddenly, they stumbled, the earth yawning open at their feet like a maw ready to swallow them whole. "Sarah!" Ethan barely managed to keep his footing, grasping her hand fiercely as they balanced on the line between salvation and annihilation. "Trust me," she urged, determination hardening her voice. "We won't let it win." But as the shadows gathered, sinking lower with a sinister intent, a terrible realization hit her. The darkness had been anticipating their every move, just watching and waiting. It was already playing its game, and they were just pawns. "Keep moving," Ethan yelled, his voice raw, breaking through the haze of despair that threatened to claim them again. And then the light flickered once more, but this time it dimmed, just as she felt it sway beneath their feet, a repeating dance of dust and dread. Is it fading? She asked, dread pooling in her belly. Maybe it's burning out. He replied, panic creeping into his tone. Or being snuffed out. She whispered, eyes widening in horror as the truth settled in. Somewhere deep, within the shadows, something very smart stirred, alive with hunger and rage. What if it wasn't tea, just darkness? What if it was waiting for them to make a mistake? The shadows lunged, and just like that, they fell into the abyss again. No light, no escape. As Sarah plunged into the dark, a deafening roar surrounded them, drowning out all rational thought. And in that moment, she realized that fear wasn't just a reaction. It was a predator in its own right. What was lurking inside the darkness, and would they still be themselves when it inevitably took them? The shadows closed in, spiraling around them like a living nightmare, pulsing with a terrible hunger. Sarah felt Ethan's small hand tremble within her grip as the chilling roar of the darkness surrounded them, mocking their attempt at escape. "Stay close," she shouted, but the words felt feeble, barely a whisper in the cacophony of dread. Suddenly, a glimmer flickered back into view, a familiar shimmer of light. Hope ignited within her, fierce and blazing. "Over there," she hollered, pointing toward the far edge of the darkness, where the light began to bloom once more. They surged forward, hearts thumping wildly, fueled by desperation. The shadows clawed at their backs, their icy fingers grazing against Sarah's skin, and panic bubbled up within her like a suffocating fog. "Run, Ethan. Don't look back." The way was clear, brightening against the tide of darkness, welcoming them with open arms. With each footfall, the ground felt unstable like the monster behind them, each pulse of the earth reminding her they weren't safe. Not yet. The shadows screamed, an infernal chorus that echoed through the void, trailing behind them with breathless fury. "Almost there," she urged, forcing herself to keep moving, keep believing. In that moment, the oppressive weight of hopelessness slipped as she spotted Ethan's wide eyes glimmering with fear and determination. He was still with her. And then it came. A screech penetrated the air, splitting the very fabric of reality. The figure lunged, or perhaps it was more accurate to say it swallowed the distance between them in an instant. "You cannot escape." Its voice echoed, twisted and sharp enough to cut through flesh and bone. But Sarah wouldn't let the darkness win. She clutched the jagged root like a protective talisman. "Into the light," she screamed, the echo of her own voice propelling them forward as she anticipated their salvation. As they reached the threshold, golden light exploded in a blinding flash, enveloping them both. Sarah felt the darkness screech behind them, a desperate, angry roar swelling and echoing into silence. Would it hold? It felt as if time had stretched and snapped as they crossed into the light, the shadows dissipating around them like smoke. They stood breathless in the clearing, the air clear and laden with the scent of earth after rain. But was it a victory or a cruel trick? They stumbled into the heart of the light, disoriented, limbs quaking from the exaltation of survival. All around them, the soft glow painted the trees in gentle hues of warm invitations, the whispers of the dark replaced by the rhythmic rustle of leaves. "Mom, are we safe now?" Ethan's small voice trembled. Taking a deep, stealing breath, Sarah scanned their surroundings, relieved yet anxious. "I think we are," she replied, her heart pounding with the possibilities. But a deep sense of unease lingered in her chest. Where was the darkness? It felt like a hunter paused, waiting for its moment. They remained together in the clearing, in this slice of sunlight, aware that danger could still lurk just beyond the edges. Suddenly, the man appeared, stepping from the copse of trees, where light met dark, a sinister grin spreading across his face. "You made it," he breathed, pleasure infusing his tone, like savoring a sweet victory. "What do you want?" Sarah snapped, positioning herself protectively in front of Ethan. "Want?" he echoed, his voice wrapping around them like a silken thread. "You found a refuge." "Yes, but at what cost?" "They hunger for you, both of you." "No," she insisted, shaking her head, unable to process the gravity of his words. The darkness was coming for them still, lurking at the edges, twisting the truth. "It's over. We're free." She felt a surge of defiance pushing her words out. "Free?" He chuckled darkly, stepping closer, confidence radiating like heat. This light is but a momentary escape. The shadows are insatiable. They will find a way back for what they desire. As fear began to gnaw at her resolve, she felt the light flickering, pulsing weakly, and the shadows shifted just beyond. The trees, whispering, promising, enticing. Together, you and I, we could tame it, embrace it, and flourish, he suggested, extending his hand, dark promise mingling with the sunbeams that surrounded them. You could harness the power instead of running from it. Everything trembled, and suddenly, another howl resonated through the trees, deep and promising. The air thickened, a palpable anticipation crackling like a lightning bolt before a storm. What is he talking about? Ethan whimpered against her side, grasping her shirt in fear. Nothing, she yelled fiercely, stepping forward, fists clenched, rooted in defiance. We won't fall for your lies. We choose light, not darkness. But the man only laughed, pleased and dismissive. Do you really think the light can save you? Light simply exposes the darkness within. Just then, shadows surged from the tree-line, hungry tendrils clawing toward them with deliberate intent. With heart thundering, Sarah pulled Ethan close, eyes darting around for a way out. No, she screamed. We will not surrender to you. The flickering light shined desperately, flicking and pulsating with every beat of her heart. We can fight this, she shouted, knowing she had to be the shield, the barrier between light and dark. As the shadows lunged forward, seemingly timed against their breaths, Sarah gripped Ethan's hand tighter. Run, Ethan. With no hesitation, pulling him toward the heart of the light, they fled into the unknown once more. The shadows howled in fury behind them, chasing and clawing. Finally, as they surged toward a radiant aura, Sarah felt the frail barrier of brightness grow stronger around them, the shadows fading behind. Keep moving. We can make it, she encouraged, pushing through the fear. And as they burst free into the endless warmth of pure light, she paused, taking one last look at the twisted forms of shadows retreating. Behind her echoed the chorus of despair, fading slowly into memory. The man's final taunt lingered in the air, a promise that would forever give chase. But for now, they had escaped. Sarah glanced down at Ethan, his small face reflecting the peace that filled her heart. They had made it. And whatever darkness dared to follow, she would face it head-on, one unwavering step at a time. Together, they were meant to shine. In that moment, they illuminated a path toward healing, salvation weaving through their bond, embracing the very essence of hope. As they turned toward the spreading dawn, she whispered, "We can take on anything together, Ethan. Together." And for the first time, the shadows behind them felt far away, retreating into the void, waiting for another dusk to linger their wicked embrace. Yet, they left the dark where it belonged, fearlessly stepping into the promise of a new beginning. The echoes faded away, announcing not an end, but an everlasting journey of resilience and love. If you've enjoyed this conclusion, it's time for you to step up. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will thrill and chill you. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment for true fans to rally and support the channel. Let us keep this adventure alive.